Hey everybody, Brett Thompson here with the Thompson Law Group. All right, this is a Closing Ninja Classroom, another installment. This is going to be a Teaching Tuesday. So listing agents, you might want to turn on your listening ears for this one. Very important that you get all the right people on the bus, all right, from the beginning. And what I mean by that is before you enter into a listing agreement and start going down that road, you got to make sure that you're dealing with all the appropriate parties, meaning all the parties that have an ownership interest in the property. A couple examples would be you have someone come to you say, hey, mama died, I'm the executor of mama's estate, and I want to list the property and sell it on behalf of the estate. You do not have all the information you need up front in order to make a determination if you're dealing with the right people. Number one, you need to make sure mama died, all right? You want to look for a probated will if she died with a will. You want to make sure there's a probated will and that appointing this particular person as the executor. All right, and then you need to take a look at the will, either yourself or you need to refer it to an attorney because the will has to have specific language in there. Number one, it either has to specifically say, hey, executor, I want you to liquidate the home and disperse the proceeds amongst the heirs, or it has to grant the authority to the executor by referring to and incorporating into the document the Virginia statute for fiduciaries, which allows the executor to convey the real estate on behalf of the estate. So, and also you want to make sure that your executor has a letter of qualification from the clerk's office acknowledging that they have been qualified and designated as the executor. If you don't have that, okay, and the will doesn't say that the executor can sell the property and have the authority to do so, and the will doesn't say that the executor has all the powers in the Virginia Code for fiduciaries, you're not dealing with the right person because there may be other heirs, and real estate drops through a rock, like a rock through the estate, meaning that if my mother died, I have a brother, all right? And if I do not have the authority as the executor, by operation of law, my brother and myself both own an undivided 1/2 interest in the property. Why is that important? All right, let's say that I signed your listing agreement, all right, as the executor, but I need my brother to join because my brother and I own the property. We have a problem. Let's say that a buyer comes along and puts an offer on the house and only myself signs the contract. We have a bigger problem. In the RAIN contract, paragraph 7C specifically says, the seller represents that the seller, number one, owns good and marketable fee simple interest in the property, and number two, has the right to transfer the property without obtaining the consent or approval from any other party. Right off the bat, that is a materially untrue representation because I don't own fee simple 100% ownership interest. My brother also owns. And then number two, I cannot convey it without the consent of someone else. My brother would have to join in on the deed, and so he would have to consent. So that would be a material misrepresentation. Paragraph, what is it, 7? It's paragraph 7F says, quote, if any representation by the seller is materially untrue, the seller shall be deemed in default under the terms of the agreement, and the buyer shall have the right to terminate this agreement, whereupon the deposit shall be paid to the buyer. And also it goes forth and says that the buyer can sue for any kind of damages as well. So if you don't have all the right people on the bus, meaning that there's someone else out there that would have to sign the deed, from the get-go, your seller is in breach of contract. The buyer can terminate the agreement and then sue the seller for breach. That would be the same if you were dealing with an LLC. If someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm a house flipper, I'm the principal of this LLC, and I want you to list this house for me. You need to take a look at the operating agreement and see what the operating agreement says, see how many members there are, what their membership interest is, and see who's the managing member or the designated officer in the operating agreement that has the authority to bind the company in contracts and convey the property at closing. So you've got to have all the right people on the bus. If an individual comes up to you and says, hey, I own this property, I want to sell it, it would be a good idea to do a quick search and obtain a copy of the source deed, which is the last deed in the chain of title for that piece of property. And the grantees on the source deed would indicate who has ownership interest in the property. And if there's somebody else on the deed who's also a grantee and you're not dealing with them, you do not have all the right people on the bus. So the lesson for today is, especially for the listing agents, make sure you got to use due diligence, do a little research, make a little effort here. Make sure that you feel confident that you have all the right people on the bus. You've got everybody that has an ownership interest, or if it's a corporate entity or a trust or an estate, that they have the authority to bind the entity and convey property out of the entity. So get everybody on the bus. If you don't, your seller is in breach from the get-go, and then the damages kick in, and then it gets ugly. So I hope that was helpful for the Teaching Tuesday for today. Boom.